I will start with the video. Hi, my name is Anubhav.
I'm Elizabeth.
I'm Miriam.
I'm Mitchell.
I'm Vicky.
And we are seniors at UC Berkeley in the Biodesign Immersion Experience Program.
Our project's focus was hydrocephalus, a neurological condition characterized by an increase of cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, in the ventricles of the brain.
This complex disease has various causes, but is often treated with a shunt that redirects CSF to other parts of the body. However, a major concern is the shunt clogging.
This summer, our goal was to use the Lean LaunchPad method to develop a business model for a biodesign solution through a series of stakeholder interviews.
We started with a solution created by the alumni BIE 192 team. Their solution was using an ultrasound cavitation method to disperse debris to prevent clogging.
After talking to Dr. Kim, our clinical client, our team pivoted to his idea of an implantable sensor with wireless readout of intracranial pressure, or ICP.
From that point forward, we talked to stakeholders from a variety of groups to test a solution against the needs of the customers.
We talked to 14 neurosurgeons and neurologists from all around the world as far as Norway. What we heard repeatedly was the need to measure intracranial pressure non-invasively. Dr. Gary Clark called non-invasive ICP monitoring the holy grail for hydrocephalus, and Dr. Rock described it as a potential gold standard.
Some other important lessons were that doctors want something easy to use and accurate with minimal risks.
We heard from patients from around the world and learned about the large spectrum of symptoms unique to each patient. Headaches were the only way to monitor the condition and shunt function at home. Patients and parents faced stress and anxiety and repeatedly told us about their need for home monitoring.
In terms of key activities and resources and the cost and revenue structure, we also talked to a few competitors in the industry. These conversations were crucial in teaching us more about building a startup in medical devices, alternative diagnostic methods, and steps for FDA approval and insurance CPT code.
After hearing from all these stakeholders, we knew what the hydrocephalus community needs: a non-invasive, wireless intracranial pressure monitor.
But there are already challenges. The hydrocephalus market alone is too small, and new technology and science has yet to be developed. As teams all over the world work towards different solutions, non-invasive ICP monitoring is the end goal, the holy grail. If done accurately and non-invasively, it will change the face of hydrocephalus and traumatic brain injury, and alleviate pain around the world. Okay, and jumping straight into our presentation. So, we're Team Gold, as we mentioned in our video, and this summer we explored the use of intracranial pressure monitoring to improve hydrocephalus treatment. So here's our team. As we mentioned, our clinical client for this summer was Dr. Kim, a pediatric general surgeon at UCSF. A quick shout out to our advisors, Professor Herr and Dr. Jenkins, and our I-Core mentors, Darren and Rhonda.
A brief market study around hydrocephalus shows the market valuation is around 1.3 billion globally, but only 600 million in the US. The largest market portion exists in the US, primarily from shunt insertion manufactured by Medtronic. Smaller startups such as Rails, ShuntCheck, and Brain4Care are working on flow and pressure sensors. And at week 0, we started with an ultrasonic cavitation device from last year's BIE 192 capstone project to eliminate occlusions in the shunt.
From there, we emailed 21 individuals and received no response. We knew we had to change our contact strategy. On the right are some facts about hydrocephalus, and most notably that 1 million Americans are affected and 100% of shunts fail within 10 years. So we transitioned to a wireless, non-invasive pressure monitor after speaking with Dr. Kim, who stressed we should work towards diagnosing problems with shunts before attempting to fix them.
Here's our first business model canvas, or BMC for short, that we made when we had only finished our clinical client and senior capstone member interviews. At this point, we had a lot of question marks from educated guesses about what the startup would look like. So around that red circled box, our value proposition guess for pediatric neurosurgeons was to make ICP measurement easier, which would make diagnosis easier and safer and boost their patient outcomes. For patients, our product would let them monitor their own health at home and decrease unnecessary invasive surgeries. For the purchasing unit, we plan to get them another useful medical device for their physicians, as well as more insurance reimbursement. Finally, for the insurance company, we mostly envisioned helping them save money. So at the beginning, we didn't have a solid picture yet of who the customers really are in that customer segments box, but we pretty accurately guessed neurosurgeons, patients, purchasing units, and insurance. For the customer relationships and channels, they are the ways in which we're going to reach our customers. We envisioned open communication and support for our customers, and we also envisioned salespeople and delivery vans, among other things, to get our product to them. For key partners, activities, and resources, they originally included research and development, manufacturing, medical domain experts, patents for the device, FDA approval, and grant funding. And finally, for cost structure, included revenue costs, employee pay, manufacturing, and passing FDA approval. The revenue streams included mainly the profits from selling our device to hospitals.
With Dr. Kim's idea, we started on customer interviews, which led to a few pivot directions. We felt that we could either keep improving on improving the shunt, or instead focus on some sensors or other home monitoring devices.
Next slide. So we spoke to physicians, organizations, and patients worldwide. The technology and problems are similar across the board. However, patients have different healthcare systems, so some patients had less anxiety when it came to pain. We also learned that hydrocephalus is a close and small community across the world. We quickly recognized that the physicians, scientists, and organizations work and collaborate together to solve problems caused by hydrocephalus.
Here are some of our aha moments. For example, Dr. Gary Clark mentioned non-invasive measurement of intracranial pressure as the holy grail. And the patient we interviewed said, "You are good until you are not," and that a device to monitor intracranial pressure would be great to notify patients of shunt failure. So basically from doctors, we learned about the necessary features, including non-invasiveness and real-time monitoring. And from patients, we learned about the needs to be able to monitor at home on a regular basis.
So from our NSF core lessons, we started with a customer ecosystem that gradually expanded as we learned more about the various relationships and connections between stakeholders around hydrocephalus. With our team kind of as a future vendor in the middle, we split our stakeholders into 4 groups belonging to the hospital, individuals, organizations, and others. And we're aware that some of the nuances and complexities are left out, but this gave us a nice overview.
So after our interviews, we developed customer archetypes of our key customer segments. This included a snapshot of their current outlook on hydrocephalus and what our company seeks to provide them. Some notable points were the prevalence of hydrocephalus patients for neurosurgeons, the large number of revision surgery patients have undergone, and price negotiations led by purchasing committees. At our midway point, we had 25 total interviews, and everything in red are the new insights we gained from customer interviews. Talking to a number of stakeholders helped us better understand who these individuals were and their challenges in facing hydrocephalus. We learned the most from the stories of patients who told us about their symptoms, their stresses and anxieties, and a lack of understanding about what's happening with their shunt. We also learned more about the role of purchasing parties at the hospitals and insurance companies. So throughout the interviews, we noticed that non-invasive was a repeatedly mentioned term.
It eventually reached our value prop panel as we added it to our MVP and adjusted some of the goals for such a device, including ease of use for doctors, usability at home for parents to monitor shunt function.
After a series of interviews and discussions with the team, we had pivoted again, and our MVP was now a wireless, non-invasive pressure monitor using transcranial Doppler ultrasonography. So additional features include continuous data collection and the flexibility to be used both at home and at the hospital. By week 6, we had so many new facts for our business model canvas that we couldn't continue to really edit and add to our old BMC. To reorganize our thinking process, we did a complete refresh. This included color coding and splitting panels into subcategories. Our customer segment and value prop sides were beautified, but stayed mostly the same. Our left side saw a lot of new information from the startups we talked to, such as key steps in manufacturing, distribution, and also in gaining approvals, such as with FDA, and trust in the community. Soon after that, we were looking to see our customer fit and if the value propositions of our new MVP met the wants and needs of our customers. Physicians want to diagnose and treat hydrocephalus, but problems such as infections from current invasive procedures are pains for them. Our non-invasive ICP device will theoretically provide the data they need to inform their treatment decisions while reducing risks from invasive procedures. In the patient segment, we quickly learned that they want to monitor their own health and shunt function at home. And this becomes increasingly relevant during current times, with COVID making telehealth and home health monitoring more important. We also learned that anxiety over nonspecific symptoms and unnecessary invasive procedures are pains for them. Our device would give them peace of mind because it can tell them if their shunt is functioning and ensure that physicians only perform surgeries when shunt has actually failed. And for the purchasing unit, finally, we learned that they're mainly looking for technology and equipment that boosts patient outcomes and replacing devices that are nearing end of life. Key pains are that devices may be too costly, hard to standardize within the hospital, and don't really boost patient outcomes. So our device would definitely focus on easy standardization in hospitals, low cost, and timely delivery to make purchasing committees happy.
With our updated MVP, we talked to more customers. One key discovery we had was that the hydrocephalus market itself is not big at all, about 40% short of the 1 billion market value necessary to gain funding and be successful. So we would need to expand our target customer segments to include tangential users, primarily traumatic brain injury and cerebral hemorrhage. And just last week, we talked to Dr. ID from Norway, and he told us about his research on various methods monitoring ICP. According to him, transcranial Doppler ultrasonography has not shown good results, and his team just started exploring new methods like optic nerve compression through the eye. Here's a quote from Dr. ID. Non-invasive pressure monitoring has been disappointing. Someone needs to find a new signal source, and it's going to be very difficult. So we can see that being able to detect shunt failure accurately using intracranial pressure definitely remains a big challenge still. But from our research, we do see a lot of active effort aiming to solve this problem as well.
This summer internship, we learned not to be afraid to reach out to stakeholders and to use connections. We landed some interviews through referrals and by tagging along with other teams in the internship. We learned most people are pretty nice and will talk to you as long as you emphasize you're there to learn. We had a lot of opinions and knowledge thrown at us, so we had to keep an open mind, listen to data, and pivot when necessary. In regards to organizing our data, we learned to put our new insights into accessible and interpretable form and answer the questions why we interviewed the person, what we learned, and other surprising things that came up during the interview.
Our final minimal viable product will ideally have these qualities. It will be wireless, non-invasive, easy to use, smartphone compatible, reimbursable, and most importantly, it will measure intracranial pressure accurately and precisely. A current lead we have on measuring ICP accurately is with optic nerve compression measurements.
So our future plans is to continue on this journey and to publish a white paper of our research to share what we learned and contribute to the ongoing supply of resources for those affected with hydrocephalus or studying hydrocephalus. For all the physicians, some of who have joined us to support us during this presentation, and also who might see this video at a later time, to those that asked, let me know what you find at the end of our interviews. We definitely plan to share our research with them. Hydrocephalus also is quite a small disease. So as having conducted a summer's worth of research on it, we as a team are going to take responsibility to raise awareness for it and just continue tracking studies and research teams around the world, such as Brain for Care, who are working towards these problems. And finally, a sincere thank you to Professor Amy Her and Dr. Susan Jenkins, Darren and Rhonda, Dr. Sung-Hoon Kim, our clinical clients, all the physicians we interviewed, the companies and organizations who reached out to us and provided us knowledge, and all of the patients who shared their story with us. Thank you. That wraps up for Team Gold. Okay, so we are pretty close to wrapping up questions. 2 minutes until Team Oski joins on. But questions from Professor Her. For home health monitoring, is additional research needed to determine what actionable readout is usable by the patient, family, or telehealth? In other words, do you have a sense of what the at-home readout would be? Does anyone on my team want to take that? I can get started, and then if anyone wants to add on. I think at the moment, because of the lack of research with NICP, non-invasive ICP monitoring, it's kind of a relative readout. We would anticipate having some kind of baseline measurement when the shunt is first implanted and all things are going smoothly, and then kind of anticipate any relative spikes or increases in ICP be read out as a warning to the patient. Understandably, use of a device needs to be very easy and to understand with not too big of a learning curve. So we expect it would be mostly application and software based, where the user design and user experience is very easy. And then another question from Professor Her, are there other application areas where non-invasive pressure monitoring systems are used? For example, tire pressure monitors and transportation.
Our team has not looked that much into areas other than medicine, but I think like blood pressure monitoring, they are right now non-invasive, so it's definitely a possibility for non-invasiveness.
Yeah, so we are out of time, but I'll take just 1 minute to add on to that. There have definitely been a lot of strategies used to measure blood ICP non-invasively, which our team kind of explored and researched as much as we could. As a quick overview, we were thinking transcranial Doppler ultrasonography, which measures blood flow using a Doppler to a cranial artery. Intracranial compliance, so the stretching of the skull, is something that's kind of contested, but was FDA approved by Brain for Care, a company in Brazil. And as Dr. Eide mentioned, he's looking at optic nerve compression.